What if I told you Diddy's punishment isn't over? Not even close. Because just when he thought his power, money, and influence could shield him from the hardest parts of prison life, Judge Aaron just made a move that changes everything. A single decision that strips away Diddy's comfort, his protection, and maybe his safety. For months, people believed Diddy would serve his time in one of the country's safest facilities, Fort Dix, New Jersey, a low-security, nearly luxurious federal prison. Nicknamed Club Fed, it's where white-collar offenders go to quietly ride out their time. And everyone from insiders to his own legal team thought that was where Diddy was headed. But this week, the judge said no. Judge Aaron Subramanian officially rejected Diddy's transfer to Fort Dix, denying the request that would have guaranteed him security, access, and comfort. Instead, he ordered that Diddy be assigned to a New York City area facility, one with an entirely different reputation, a place known not for quiet, but for chaos, not for safety, but for survival. And according to insiders, this is the worst-case scenario Diddy never saw coming. You see, the prosecution didn't even object to his Fort Dix request. They were fine with it. But the judge? He made it clear he wasn't. And that decision didn't come lightly. It came from what some are calling a hidden reason. So what's really going on behind this sudden reversal? What did Judge Aaron see that made him decide Fort Dix wasn't an option for Diddy? And what does it mean for Diddy's life behind bars now that he's heading to a violent, overcrowded New York prison instead of a quiet camp? Stay tuned, because this story is about to take a darker turn than anyone expected. But first, make sure you're subscribed to Fame Insight, the only channel that breaks down these stories with real reports, real context, and no gossip. Let's hit 1,000 subscribers together, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any of these breaking updates. Now, let's go inside the walls of what could become Diddy's real nightmare. When the court documents dropped, it wasn't just another update, it was a bombshell. Judge Aaron's memo made it clear there would be no special treatment, no soft landing, and no celebrity exceptions. He wrote that Diddy's request to serve time at Fort Dix was officially denied, and the Bureau of Prisons was instructed to place him in a New York area facility instead. Now that one line might sound procedural, but in the federal prison system, it's everything. Fort Dix is known as one of the most relaxed prisons in the country. Open dorms, wide fields, no cells, and most inmates there are serving time for non-violent white-collar crimes like fraud or tax evasion. It's the kind of place where inmates take cooking classes, play softball, and count down their days quietly. But that's not where Diddy is going. Judge Aaron's rejection means he's being sent to an entirely different kind of institution, one where survival isn't guaranteed and comfort doesn't exist. Inside sources close to the case said Diddy was visibly shaken after hearing the decision. He thought his lawyers had locked in Fort Dix as part of his adjustment plan. His team had even started calling in favors, trying to ensure he'd land in a facility that allowed open movement, communication privileges, and better visitation access. But Judge Aaron wasn't having it. He didn't just deny the request, he stamped it with intent. In his note to the Bureau, he wrote, "If another geography is requested, submit by October 10th. Translation: you have until that date to find another facility, but Fort Dix is off the table completely." And that's when whispers began spreading through legal circles. Some say the judge's decision came after new information was reviewed about Diddy's behavior behind bars and concerns over potential influence in Fort Dix. Others claim the judge simply wanted to make an example, to prove that no amount of fame or money could bend the system anymore. Whatever the reason was, one thing's certain: it sent shockwaves through Diddy's team and the prison system itself. And this is just the beginning of what's coming next. Because what's waiting for him in that New York facility, let's just say, it's nothing like the club-fed life he imagined. Diddy's push for Fort Dix wasn't random. It was calculated. From the moment his legal team realized prison time was inevitable, they began quietly mapping out one thing: control. Every move from the appeal filings to his post-sentencing behavior was designed to land him in one of the most lenient federal facilities possible. Fort Dix was their golden ticket, a low-security, open-campus prison where money still whispers and connections can keep you safe. Inmates there live in dorm-style housing, not cramped cells. They play basketball, attend classes, and enjoy steady access to visitation and recreation privileges. And Diddy's team knew it. If he could get to Fort Dix, he could maintain communication, manage PR through controlled phone calls, and even keep business dealings alive through intermediaries. But here's where it gets dark. Insiders claim Diddy wasn't just looking for comfort, he was looking for protection. Sources close to former associates say he already had people lined up inside Fort Dix, ready to make his stay easy. Some of them reportedly had ties to old music industry contacts and private networks that could guarantee his safety, or at least his silence. That's why the denial hit so hard. Because when the judge said no, it didn't just block Diddy's comfort, it broke his entire post-sentence strategy, and that's what insiders are calling the real punishment. He lost his plan, the protection he thought his fame could buy him, and the illusion of control he clung to since day one. But here's the part no one's talking about. Why did the the judge care so much when even prosecutors didn't? What did he see in Diddy's request that raised a red flag? We'll get into that next, because this one detail might explain why Judge Aaron said absolutely not. Behind the scenes, Judge Aaron's decision wasn't about revenge, it was about precedent. The courtroom may have gone quiet after sentencing, but according to multiple legal insiders, the judge had been keeping close watch on Diddy's post-trial behavior, and something didn't sit right. While prosecutors had no objection to Fort Dix, Judge Aaron reportedly received private memos suggesting Diddy's influence could stretch far beyond his legal reach. There were quiet concerns that a man with his connections and wealth could manipulate his environment inside a low-security facility like Fort Dix. Some reports even hinted that Diddy's name had surfaced in conversations among inmates already there, individuals allegedly expecting a new VIP arrival who'd be well taken care of. If true, that would mean Diddy's comfort and control were being arranged before he even stepped through the gates. And that's the one thing a federal judge cannot allow. So when Judge Aaron reviewed the memo, he made a choice that sent a message, one meant for the entire system. He wasn't going to let celebrity privilege shape justice, not on his watch. The judge's stance has been described as tight-lipped but intentional. No lengthy explanation, no fiery speech, just a quiet, definitive no. And for Diddy, that silence said more than words ever could, because if Judge Aaron saw even a hint of corruption, that could mean new scrutiny, maybe even new investigations. And if Diddy thought this sentence was the end of his problems, he might have just realized it's only the beginning. But what exactly made Fort Dix so controversial? And why does everyone from lawyers to ex-inmates say it's the prison you beg to get into? Let's break that down next. Fort Dix has long been known as the country club of federal prisons, a place where white-collar offenders, politicians, and high-profile figures quietly serve their time away from the chaos of true lockup. It's technically low security, but in reputation, it's almost elite. No cell blocks, no bars, just wide-open dorms, soft schedules, and inmates who know how to keep things quiet. But the part most people don't realize is that Fort Dix runs on reputation. It's not just about good behavior, it's about influence, connections, and who you know once you get there. Former inmates describe it as a place where money still matters. If you come in with status, you get protection, respect, and a kind of unspoken hierarchy. Diddy knew that. He wasn't applying to Fort Dix for rehabilitation. He was applying for insulation. He wanted distance from the dangers of a regular prison, a soft landing where his name still meant something. But here's the problem. That reputation works both ways. For every inmate who sees Fort Dix as safety, there's another who sees it as opportunity. A celebrity inside a low-security facility becomes leverage. A name that big, it attracts attention, and not the kind Diddy wants. And Judge Aaron likely saw that, because sending a man of Diddy's profile into Fort Dix doesn't just risk favoritism, it risks influence. He could build alliances, buy loyalty, control narratives, all from the inside. That's why Judge Aaron's refusal was so sharp. He wasn't denying Diddy comfort, he was denying him power, because Fort Dix isn't a prison for men who fear danger, it's for men who fear obscurity. And for Diddy, obscurity might be worse than confinement. But now the real question is, where does he go instead? Because the New York facilities he's facing now are nothing like Fort Dix, and in the next section, we'll go inside those walls, where Diddy's name won't protect him. If Fort Dix was Diddy's dream destination, then the New York facilities on the table now are his nightmare. Because unlike Fort Dix, these prisons aren't built for comfort, they're built for control. One option being discussed by officials is Otisville, a medium security facility about 90 minutes from the city. It's quiet, but not gentle. It houses longer-term inmates, many with nothing left to lose. The violence rate is higher, the routines are stricter, and privacy almost non-existent. Inmates share cramped cells instead of dorms, and tensions flare fast. Even former inmates describe Otisville as a pressure cooker where every day feels like you're being watched. Another possibility is Ray Brook, a colder, rougher prison located nearly 5 hours from New York City. It's isolated, surrounded by snow and silence, a place where visits are rare and comfort doesn't exist. Guards are tougher, and the inmates, many from violent cases, don't care about celebrity names. For someone like Diddy, that's a problem. Because while fame brought him influence in the outside world, in here, it makes him a target. And according to several former corrections officers, that target isn't symbolic, it's real. There's status in breaking someone famous down. And Diddy, with all his history of arrogance, control, and power, would represent the ultimate challenge. That's why people close to him are reportedly panicking, because behind the scenes, his team knows he's not built for this. He's used to bodyguards, not bunkmates, to calling the shots, not following orders. And in a facility like Otisville or Ray Brook, his reputation could be a curse. Every glance, a threat. Every whisper, a reminder that money can't save you anymore. But here's where it gets darker. Rumors say Diddy has already faced harassment inside MDC Brooklyn before transfer. So if that's what it was like before, imagine what's coming next. And in the next part, we'll break down how those early warning signs inside MDC might have been the judge's final clue, that Diddy's story in prison is about to get a lot more more dangerous. Wait, before we go deeper, I need to ask you something. Do you really think this is where it ends for Diddy? Because what comes next might flip this case upside down. If you've been following since the start, you already know. Here on Fame Insight, we don't chase rumors, we chase truth. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because what's coming next, you'll want to see first. Alright, now let's get back into it because this next part, it changes everything. Inside MDC Brooklyn, the signs were already there. Long before Judge Aaron made his ruling, sources inside the facility whispered that Diddy's time behind bars was far from peaceful. He wasn't living like a celebrity, he was living like prey. Guards reportedly noticed a shift. He stopped eating, stopped exercising, stopped talking to anyone. Some called it paranoia, others called it realization. Because in MDC, there are no entourages, no handlers, no yes men. It's raw and unforgiving. Every noise echoes, every rumor spreads. And according to a former staff member, Diddy's presence alone created tension among inmates. Some saw him as a payday, a target worth testing. Others despised what he represented: money, power, and arrogance. Now imagine that environment magnified in a harsher New York prison. That's why this new decision hits so hard. It's not just a change in address, it's a change in survival odds. And if what insiders claim is true, Judge Aaron already knew Diddy's situation inside MDC wasn't sustainable. He'd been attacked once, minor but symbolic, and that was before the sentencing even finalized. The memo he submitted about fearing for his life wasn't just a strategy, it was desperation. Because Diddy knows that outside of a controlled space like Fort Dix, his celebrity doesn't protect him, it isolates him. It makes him the outsider, the mark, the man everyone watches. And for the first time in decades, he's not the one pulling the strings. But here's what really twists the knife. Judge Aaron's denial wasn't just about punishment, it was about principle. Because Diddy's fear might have proven exactly why he didn't deserve the comfort he was asking for. And the next question is, what's the judge really planning for Diddy now that Fort Dix is off the table? Because this latest move might not just be a relocation, it could be the start of something much bigger. Behind closed doors, sources close to the court claim Judge Aaron's decision was far more strategic than people realize. He didn't just deny Fort Dix, he positioned Diddy. He placed him where oversight is heavier, where federal eyes never blink. Because the truth is, this case isn't just about serving time anymore, it's about watching him. Think about it. After everything that came out during trial, the evidence, the testimonies, the public outrage, putting Diddy in a soft facility would have sent the wrong message. It would have said fame still shields power, but by keeping him in the New York system, Judge Aaron ensured something else: visibility. Because every step Diddy takes now, every visitor, every phone call gets recorded, monitored, analyzed. And for prosecutors who still suspect that not all of Diddy's actions came to light, this is leverage. Maybe they're hoping pressure breaks him. Maybe they're watching to see who reaches out from the outside. Because let's be honest, Diddy's empire didn't crumble alone. It was built on silence, favors, and fear. And when silence cracks, secrets spill. That's why this isn't just about where he sleeps. It's about what he might say under pressure. Because in places like MDC and Ray Brook, you don't just lose comfort, you lose control. And Diddy without control is unpredictable. But here's the real cliffhanger. Rumors say some of those same federal teams who built the original case are still active, still gathering, still listening. So could this transfer actually be the setup for something even bigger? We'll dig into that next, because if that's true, this story might not end with a sentence. It might end with another trial. That theory isn't far-fetched, because according to several insiders, federal investigators never fully shut down operations after the sentencing. They've been quietly tracing money trails, communications, and connections that didn't fit neatly into the first conviction. And with Diddy staying in a New York-based facility instead of Fort Dix, they've got proximity on their side. Think about it. Prosecutors can call him in for questioning faster, coordinate new subpoenas easier, and monitor his associates without crossing state lines. One former federal attorney even said, keeping Diddy close means keeping the evidence closer. If that's true, then Judge Aaron's decision wasn't just punitive, it was tactical. Diddy's team knows it too. That's why they reportedly spent the last week scrambling to limit who visits him, who calls him, and what gets discussed on monitored lines. But that kind of panic always leaks. The tighter you try to seal a story, the faster the cracks appear. And in Diddy's case, those cracks are already showing. Buzz inside the courthouse says 2 former employees are now cooperating witnesses, people who were once fiercely loyal, now talking to agents in exchange for immunity. And if their testimony aligns with Cassie's earlier claims, then Diddy's 15-year fight for freedom might turn into something worse, an entirely new federal case built on obstruction, coercion, corruption, and conspiracy. And here's the part that keeps everyone watching. Federal patterns never end at one person. When they find a lead, they follow it up the ladder. And in Diddy's empire, that ladder is very, very tall. So the question is, who's next to fall? And what will Diddy do when he realizes the real battle hasn't even started yet? Inside the legal world, people are whispering that Diddy's transfer denial is the quiet beginning of Phase 3, the phase where the system turns the screws. The Bureau of Prisons doesn't just move people randomly, they move them strategically, and sources claim Diddy's new placement could put him within reach of another high-profile inmate tied to an older investigation. Why does that matter? Because sometimes the feds don't need more evidence, they just need proximity. They know how to make pressure do the talking. And for someone like Diddy, who's built his life on control, that's the ultimate weapon. Because when you strip away fame, money, and power, you're left with one thing: the truth. And right now, that truth might be closing in faster than he realizes. Reports say his lawyers are already preparing emergency motions, trying to argue safety concerns as grounds for relocation again. But those same filings could backfire, since they confirm what everyone suspects, that Diddy is afraid, not of the environment, but of exposure. Because if he breaks under pressure, he doesn't just risk more prison time, he risks revealing names, transactions, and stories that have stayed buried for decades. And remember, for someone like Diddy, his silence is currency, his connections are leverage, his image is armor. Take that away, and what's left? A man facing the reality that every phone call, every visit, every whisper could become evidence. And the biggest question of all, if the court denies him again, will Diddy finally crack under the weight of the walls closing in? Because if he does, this story won't end with a sentence. It'll explode into an entirely new chapter. And that's exactly what insiders say the prosecutors are waiting for, the crack. Because once a man like Diddy starts to break, everything he built starts to talk. The assistants who handled his schedules, the drivers who ran his errands, the friends who swore loyalty, suddenly they've got something to trade for safety. And right now, the Bureau is reportedly re-interviewing several of those same individuals who testified years ago, not to reopen the old case, but to connect it to a larger web. Some say this could extend beyond Diddy himself, into the executives, the bodyguards, the label accountants. And if even one of them flips, it could reshape everything we know about this story. Because here's what makes this moment so dangerous for him. It's not about what's proven anymore, it's about what's believable. The public no longer sees him as untouchable. Every new rumor sounds possible, every whisper feels real, and that loss of credibility is fatal in a case like this. The judge knows it, the prosecutors know it, and deep down Diddy knows it too. The empire he once used as protection is now evidence. The very machine that made him powerful may be what destroys him, but what's coming next might be even worse. Because when you corner a man who's losing everything, sometimes he doesn't stay silent. Sometimes he talks back, and if Diddy starts talking, there's no telling who might go down with him. And that's the part everyone in the industry is terrified of, because if Diddy starts naming names, it won't just shake his world, it'll expose an entire network built over decades. Rumors are already circulating that sealed cooperation agreements could be in motion, agreements that protect key witnesses in exchange for detailed accounts of how certain business deals and events were really handled. Imagine the chain reaction that could follow. Artists, executives, even legal advisors who thought they were safe might suddenly find themselves under federal scrutiny. This isn't just about revenge anymore, it's about damage control. Every label, every investor, every company with even a whisper of a tie to Diddy's past is reportedly conducting quiet internal audits, scrubbing communications, redrafting statements, preparing for the possibility that their names could surface. And while all of that chaos unfolds behind the scenes, Diddy sits in a concrete cell, watching the world outside crumble in slow motion. No music, no interviews, no spin control, just silence. The same silence that Cassie once said was his weapon is now his curse. Because silence gives room for others to speak, and the voices are getting louder. But maybe the scariest part for Diddy isn't what's being said, it's what hasn't been said yet. Because according to one insider, the real bombshell isn't public, not yet. It's buried in those sealed files waiting for Judge Aaron's review. And when those are unsealed, the world won't just be watching Diddy's downfall, they'll be watching the entire music industry tremble. And that's where this story takes its darkest turn. Because insiders claim those sealed files don't just revisit Diddy's past crimes, they expose the system that enabled them. Quiet deals, manipulated contracts, hush payments, even charity fronts allegedly used to clean money. If even a fraction of it's true, this won't just be a celebrity scandal, it'll be a federal domino effect. Think about it. Once one domino falls, the rest don't have a choice. And those who once stood behind Diddy are now reportedly sprinting away from his shadow. PR teams are deleting old photos. Executives are resigning for personal reasons. Artists are unfollowing him on social media. It's not loyalty anymore, it's survival. Because everyone knows what happens next. Once the court reopens those files, subpoenas follow. Testimonies follow, and every name that's been whispered behind closed doors could end up on paper under oath. That's the nightmare forming now. Diddy isn't just losing his freedom, he's losing control of the narrative. The man who once dictated what stories could be told about him now has no say in the story that will define him. And as those sealed files move closer to being reviewed, the question that haunts the courtroom is this: how deep does it go? Because if the whispers are right, we might not just be witnessing the fall of one man, but the unraveling of an entire empire. And here's where things get even more unsettling, because according to multiple legal analysts, Judge Aaron's sudden refusal to send Diddy to Fort Dix wasn't just about punishment, it was about protection. Not protecting Diddy, but protecting the process. Sources close to the court suggest there were credible concerns that Diddy's influence could extend even behind bars. Contacts, favors, bribes, intimidation? In other words, Fort Dix might have been too comfortable, too reachable for a man with his resources. So instead, he's being placed somewhere he can't control. No special treatment, no inner circle guards, no whispered negotiations. Just cold concrete, metal bars, and reality. And that reality is breaking him down fast. Reports from inside MDC Brooklyn say his routine has changed. Less talking, less exercise, less eating. Guards have noted he barely looks up during counts. It's not arrogance anymore, it's shock. Because for the first time in decades, Diddy can't call his way out of something. He can't charm, threaten, or pay off what's coming. But here's the real twist. Several insiders claim the Justice Department may be quietly monitoring how Diddy handles this isolation. Why? Because psychological pressure can make powerful men do desperate things, including talk. If that happens, if Diddy starts naming people to save himself, it could explode into one of the largest cultural and legal chain reactions in entertainment history. So the question is, what will Diddy do next? Stay silent and serve his time? Or drag everyone else down with him? Because either choice rewrites everything. And whichever way this goes, the storm isn't over, it's just getting started. And that's where we'll leave it for now. Because as this case unfolds, the truth behind Diddy's downfall is only getting darker, and we'll be here to break it down piece by piece. If you've made it this far, you're part of the few who actually care about facts over rumors. So don't just scroll. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video to keep real insight alive. We're chasing 1,000 subscribers, and with your help, we'll keep exposing the stories that others are too afraid to tell. This is Fame Insight, where facts cut deeper than fame.